Charlotte Beaumont glided into the grand hall with the confidence of a queen, every eye turning toward her as she prepared to make an announcement that would change her life forever. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, reflecting off the polished marble floor, while the aroma of fresh-cut roses, flown in from a private estate, perfumed the air. The entire Beaumont family, along with influential acquaintances who often graced the pages of society magazines, paused mid-conversation. Nobody knew that Charlotte's world had been quietly shattering for months. Tonight, among the clinking of crystal glasses and murmurs of anticipation, she would deliver her bombshell, the end of her marriage to billionaire Donovan Beaumont. Charlotte Beaumont was often described as ethereal. She possessed an elegance that seemed both otherworldly and deeply rooted in reality. Part of this allure was her upbringing. Born Charlotte Fairchild, an only child to two influential philanthropists in upstate New York. Her parents, George and Lucinda Fairchild, had made a modest fortune investing in sustainable energy businesses before the rest of the world caught on. As a result, Charlotte grew up in a labyrinth of ivy-covered mansions, exclusive boarding schools, and summer holidays in the French Riviera. She cultivated an appreciation for the arts, championed environmental causes, and developed a keen sense for reading people's intentions. When Charlotte was 21, she met Donovan Beaumont at a fundraising gala organized by her parents in Manhattan. Donovan was already forging his path in the tech world, a brilliant, ambitious young man who had developed a groundbreaking software platform. Tall, impeccably groomed, and exuding confidence, Donovan made everyone in the room feel like the center of his attention. His eyes sparkled whenever he talked about his future plans, and the intensity of his vision sparked something in Charlotte that night. They danced beneath glittering chandeliers, shared laughter over mini foie gras canapés, and found themselves deep in conversation until well past midnight. Their courtship blossomed quickly. Charlotte's parents recognized Donovan's potential and admired his perseverance. Some whispered that Donovan came from a modest background, raised by a single mother in a cramped Bronx apartment, always scraping by. But that only fueled his ambition. He did not want to merely succeed. He wanted to transform entire industries. Not long after their first meeting, Donovan's startup, Infinitech, landed a series of monumental deals. Venture capital poured in, catapulting him from an entrepreneurial whiz-kid to a wunderkind in the eyes of influential financiers. Names like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett were whispered around him, praising his innovative spirit. Within 2 years, Charlotte and Donovan were married in a lavish ceremony at the Fairchild estate. Roses from a prestigious British supplier decorated the garden. The bride wore a custom gown by a revered French designer, and the who's who of high society, including Oprah Winfrey and philanthropic icon Melinda Gates, attended. It was an event covered by the nation's top magazines, each hailing the couple as a new power duo in technology and philanthropy. But beneath the glitz and glamour, the marriage carried a darker undercurrent. Donovan's charm was undeniable, yet so was his burning desire for success and recognition, an insatiable thirst that pushed him to work 15-hour days, travel relentlessly, and embrace risk-taking in all forms. He confided to Charlotte early on that he wanted to be the biggest name in tech, overshadowing anyone who came before him. At first, Charlotte admired this unstoppable ambition. She believed it would pave the way for philanthropic endeavors they both dreamed of supporting, from global educational programs to sweeping environmental reforms. As Donovan's star rose, so did the fortress they built around themselves. Their combined net worth soared to the billions, and with that came an entourage of advisors, staff, bodyguards, and sycophants. It was hard to tell which new acquaintances were genuine friends and which were climbing the rungs of Donovan's influence. Yet, in those early years of marriage, Charlotte and Donovan remained close. At least during the fleeting moments Donovan was not traveling for work. The Beaumont mansion, situated in the heart of a private estate in Westchester County, became a glass castle. Designed by a famous architect, the structure was a mesmerizing blend of modern glass facades and classical stone pillars. It was an architectural masterpiece, frequently featured in lifestyle magazines. From the outside, people saw an impenetrable fortress of wealth and style, but Charlotte knew it as a place where she often roamed alone. When Donovan was gone, she filled her days with philanthropic projects, bridging local schools with art programs, hosting lavish dinners for climate change initiatives, and championing mental health awareness. She became a beloved figure in charitable circles. Her warmth, intelligence, and willingness to collaborate endeared her to many. Yet something was missing. Donovan's ambition transformed from unstoppable to corrosive. He spent more nights in California's Silicon Valley, then jetted off to Europe to secure new deals. The fleeting romantic dinners they used to share turned into email updates or quick phone calls. Even when Donovan was physically present, his mind was usually tethered to the next big pitch or investor meeting. Charlotte found herself living in a perpetual state of longing. She tried to communicate this, but Donovan, ever the problem solver, interpreted her concerns as an issue to be checked off a list, rather than a cry for emotional intimacy. As time passed, subtle changes began to erode Charlotte's belief in their union. She caught glimpses of disconcerting behavior, moments where Donovan would discreetly lower his voice to take calls, or when a dinner with colleagues suddenly seemed to include a few too many female associates. Yet for many years, the fear that something nefarious was happening remained an unspoken, nagging anxiety at the back of her mind. After all, Donovan was not just her husband. He was the father of their 2 children, Jasper and Natalie, and the media loved him. He was the visionary, a business mogul who gave compelling speeches at global conferences, proclaiming how the future of tech could save the planet. But every perfect facade eventually cracks. Summer arrived in Westchester with warm breezes and a hint of blossoming lilacs drifting through the air. Charlotte was preparing the family for a vacation to Lake Como, a tradition she and Donovan had started a few years back as a way to reconnect. She felt a spark of hope that this trip could bring them closer. However, Donovan's schedule had shifted at the last minute. He claimed a critical meeting with a new investor from Milan had come up, so he would fly separately and meet them there. In the past, Charlotte might have accepted such a change with minimal suspicion. But now, a nagging voice in her head questioned every deviation from the plan. That voice grew stronger when Charlotte stumbled upon Donovan's phone, buzzing unattended in his study. The device was usually locked behind biometric security, but at that moment it was open, displaying a message from an unfamiliar sender. "Missing you. Can't wait to see you again. A." Her heart hammered as she read the words. She had no proof of who A might be, but it was enough to raise goosebumps on her arms. There was a sense of dread that turned her stomach inside out. She placed the phone down as if it were on fire and stepped away, adrenaline surging through her veins. Over the following days, she noticed additional signs. Donovan would disappear for hours when they were supposed to be working from home together, or he'd receive a message in the middle of a conversation and abruptly change the subject, growing distant. Charlotte, torn between confronting him outright and preserving the little sense of normalcy left, began feeling like an intruder in her own marriage. One evening, while hosting a charity dinner, Charlotte exchanged glances with a longtime friend, Simone Kaufman, who was aware of the toll Donovan's absence was taking on her. Simone shot her a sympathetic look from across the table as Donovan regaled other guests with stories of his latest business triumphs. To the untrained ear, everything he said sounded glorious and groundbreaking, but Charlotte could detect a hollow ring to his words. The Donovan she fell in love with had once prioritized deep human connection. The man who now sat across from her felt more like a charismatic hologram, performing for an audience. After the dinner, Simone approached Charlotte in the large foyer, lit by overhead chandeliers. "You look so exhausted," Simone said gently, placing a hand on Charlotte's arm. "Maybe it's time you step away from all this, even briefly. You deserve a break." Charlotte managed a polite smile. "Thank you for caring. Really, I just need some fresh air." Before Simone could protest, Charlotte excused herself and slipped out into the garden. Under the moonlight, the air was cooler, and the scent of night-blooming jasmine helped soothe her nerves. 1,000 conflicting thoughts raced in her mind. Could she be misunderstanding the messages on Donovan's phone? Could A be an investor or a colleague using a flirtatious tone? Charlotte clung to every thin possibility, desperate to convince herself that her suspicion was just a manifestation of loneliness. But Charlotte was no fool. She could recognize the difference between corporate formality and intimate secrecy. Despite her misgivings, she continued forward, half in denial. Then, everything changed 2 weeks later when Charlotte received an anonymous email. It read, "Donovan has been seeing someone else for months. Check his itinerary for his business trip to Milan. A friend." Attached was a single photograph. Donovan, stepping out of a luxury car in California, his arm around a slender blonde woman in her late 20s. The look on Donovan's face was not platonic. Charlotte felt a vice around her heart as she examined the photo again and again. Her first reaction was to confront him immediately. But Donovan was away, coincidentally, or perhaps not, on another business trip. She tried his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. She considered calling his assistant, Bethany, but realized she wanted answers from Donovan himself, not some carefully staged explanation. Anguish roiled in her stomach, but a quiet part of her mind urged restraint. She needed to be certain, to have more than just a photograph and an anonymous email. The next few days turned Charlotte into a detective of sorts. She discreetly interviewed Donovan's driver, a loyal employee who had been with the family for years. He confirmed that Donovan had made several unplanned detours to an upscale townhouse in Manhattan. Each time, he insisted the driver wait around the corner to avoid detection. Charlotte also found a receipt from a boutique hotel in San Francisco, a place Donovan once claimed he detested for its lack of privacy. Yet the receipt was for a romantic suite, complete with champagne and an in-room spa service. Slowly, every suspicion sharpened into reality. It wasn't just the betrayal that shook Charlotte. It was the betrayal by the man who promised her a lifetime partnership built on trust and honesty. The father of her children. The philanthropic visionary who told the world about ethical leadership and moral integrity. She felt livid and humiliated, but above all, she felt heartbreak on a scale she had never imagined. What Charlotte didn't expect was how quickly events would spiral out of her control. Determined to confront Donovan privately, she waited until he was due to return from another crucial meeting, this time in London. She planned to have him meet her at the Beaumont mansion for a quiet discussion before the annual Beaumont family reunion, a grand affair that brought the extended family together for a weekend. Every year, Donovan's parents, siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins, and even second cousins gathered from all over the globe at the mansion. They would hold barbecues, philanthropic auctions, and heartfelt toasts about unity and legacy. However, Donovan's flight got in late, and by the time he arrived at the estate, the entire clan was already present. The mansion teemed with laughter, clinking glasses, and excited chatter reverberating through the halls. Donovan walked in, wearing a sharp navy suit, carrying an air of exhausted triumph. He greeted various relatives while Charlotte stood at the foot of the sweeping staircase, her heart pounding with anticipation. She was still deciding whether to drag him aside immediately or wait until the festivities concluded. But fate had other plans. As if orchestrated by some cosmic design, Donovan's phone slipped out of his pocket while hugging his mother, landing face down on the marble floor. An audible gasp echoed through the foyer. One of the teenage cousins picked it up and handed it back to him, but not before the screen lit up with a text from Alyssa, the same name Charlotte had seen in multiple clues. "You did great, babe. Can't wait to see you next week," the text read. Donovan fumbled with the phone, cheeks flushing. He tried to dismiss it with a forced laugh, but eyes from various corners of the foyer lingered on the exchange. Some relatives looked puzzled, others politely averted their gaze. Only Charlotte noticed that beneath Donovan's polished exterior, panic flickered in his eyes. He excused himself to slip into his study, presumably to compose himself. Charlotte followed, her anger fueling her steps. Once inside, she shut the heavy mahogany door behind her. The study was lined with bookshelves containing rare first editions, many of them gifts from philanthropic friends. Donovan faced her, a tense expression across his face. "What do you want me to say?" he said finally, his voice unsteady. Charlotte looked at him, sadness and fury twisting in her chest. "I want you to tell me the truth. Who is she?" He swallowed hard, glancing at the door as if to ensure they were alone. Then, as if some dam had broken, he began talking, denying nothing and explaining everything. Her name was Alyssa Madison, a financial consultant who had become entangled with Donovan after a series of late-night meetings. Donovan insisted it started innocently, that she was just a bright mind who aided him in expanding Infinitech's global reach. Then lines blurred, he said. Stress, ambition, and the glamour of success all converged into a toxic mixture. Before he knew it, he had crossed moral boundaries. Though Charlotte could see Donovan trembling, she found little room for empathy. His confession didn't heal the wounds. It poured salt on them. Every new detail felt like a betrayal 10 times over. Yet she forced herself to stand tall and maintain composure, if only for a moment. The annual family dinner was about to commence in the grand hall. Waitstaff bustled around, setting up the elaborately decorated long tables, shining silver cutlery, and ensuring vintage wines were at the perfect temperature. Outside, children ran and played under the watchful eyes of nannies. Uncles and cousins gathered on the terrace, engaged in lively debate over business, sports, and philanthropic projects. Ordinarily, Charlotte would have been the gracious hostess. This time, she felt like an actress in a tragedy about to reach its climax. Instead of stalling, Charlotte decided to confront Donovan publicly. It was not an act of revenge, but a need for truth to surface. She had spent months grappling with loneliness, heartbreak, and suspicion. To continue with pleasantries would break her spirit. irreparably. She reasoned that Donovan's affair was not just a personal betrayal, but also a lie he was living among the very relatives who adored him. So, as the family gathered for dinner, Charlotte quietly signaled the head butler to hold the first course. She tapped her crystal wine glass with a spoon, a gentle chime that swiftly captured everyone's attention. Conversations ceased, and heads turned toward her. Donovan shot her a fearful look from across the room. Charlotte's pulse raced, but outwardly she appeared calm, regal. "Good evening, everyone," she began, her voice carrying the quiet authority of a person who has never needed to raise her tone to be heard. "I know you all flew in from different corners of the world to be here tonight. I'm grateful for your presence, more than you know." Murmurs of approval and curiosity rippled through the crowd. Donovan's father, Arthur Beaumont, observed her intently, and his mother, Camille, looked perplexed but intrigued. The younger cousins grew silent, sensing something bigger was afoot. Charlotte continued, "This evening was meant to be a celebration of family, unity, and the collective memories that bind us together. Unfortunately, there's something heavy on my heart that I can't keep hidden any longer." She paused, taking a measured breath. "Donovan and I, well, let's just say, our marriage is not the perfect picture you might imagine. In fact, I've decided I'm leaving him." A stunned silence dropped over the room. Gasps, whispers, and the clatter of silverware rang out like a discordant symphony. Donovan stiffened. His knuckles whitened around the back of the chair he was holding. He opened his mouth to speak, but Charlotte raised a hand to signal she was not yet finished. "I make this announcement with the deepest regret, but also with honesty. Donovan has strayed." Her voice grew uneven, though she summoned every ounce of grace to keep her emotions in check. "I can't in good conscience remain silent and pretend otherwise. This is my choice, and I believe it's the right one." A tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it gently and stared at the sea of shocked faces. Distant cousins, uncles, aunts, Donovan's parents, and her own 2 children, who looked on from the far side of the table in confusion and fear. Charlotte's heart broke for them, but she pressed on. "I need you all to understand," she said, her voice choking slightly, "that I've tried for years to hold on to the family we built, to stand by Donovan through his success and his struggles. But there's only so much deception a heart can endure. I'm sorry if this ruins your evening." Donovan's voice cut through the air, shaky yet forceful. "Charlotte, please, we can talk about this privately. There's no need to do it here, in front of everyone." A single ripple of tension passed through the crowd. Charlotte stood taller, looking at Donovan, eyes brimming with heartbreak, but unwavering in her resolution. "I begged you to talk privately, Donovan. For months, I reached out, hoping you'd open up about what was happening to us. You shut me out. So now, I'm done knocking on a door that won't open." A murmur of shock and sympathy spread through the hall. Arthur Beaumont rubbed his temple in disbelief. Camille placed a trembling hand over her mouth. Donovan's siblings exchanged stunned glances. Simone Kaufman, who had joined as a friend of the family, stood near the back, tears welling in her eyes. It was a moment that would forever divide the before and after of Charlotte's life. In a single, decisive act, she had shattered the veil of illusions that draped their public image. Donovan looked like a man who had been cornered by the consequences of his own actions, his complexion pale, his once confident posture faltering. In the immediate aftermath, the grand hall resembled a chamber of echoes. A flurry of overlapping reactions rippled among the guests. Some relatives rushed to Charlotte, arms extended, offering comfort. Others swarmed Donovan, demanding an explanation. The staff stood awkwardly to the side, unsure whether to continue serving or retreat from the emotional battlefield. Charlotte, feeling dizzy from adrenaline, managed a nod to the head butler, who silently understood it was best to serve dinner in smaller, separate settings for anyone still wishing to eat. The large family meal they had planned would not be happening. She turned, searching for her children, Jasper and Natalie. They had been playing in the adjacent hallway moments before her announcement, but now she saw them at the hall's entrance, eyes wide with fear. "Mom," Jasper ventured, stepping forward. The 12-year-old was tall for his age, and his eyes flicked back and forth between Charlotte and Donovan. Natalie, only 8, clung to Jasper's arm, looking on the verge of tears. Charlotte knelt down to their level, ignoring the swirl of grown-up chaos behind her. "Sweethearts," she said softly, "I'm so sorry you had to hear that. Your father and I, we love you very much. That will never change." She opened her arms, and they both leaned into her embrace, confusion etched in their small faces. Donovan walked over, face stricken. He tried to reach out to them, but Jasper instinctively tensed, and Natalie shifted closer to Charlotte. Donovan's expression crumpled at the sight, but he drew back, as if aware he was the cause of their fear. From a few feet away, Donovan's mother, Camille, watched the heartbreaking scene, tears glistening in her eyes. She hovered near them, wanting to help, but uncertain how. Eventually, she stepped forward and patted Charlotte's shoulder. "My dear, is there anything I can do?" Charlotte looked up, her eyes reflecting a mixture of sorrow and determination. "Right now, I just need some space. I'm sorry. I know this is difficult for you too." Camille nodded, swallowing her own pain. It was a complicated moment for her. She loved her son unconditionally, but she had also grown to admire and cherish Charlotte as the daughter she never had. In another corner, Arthur Beaumont had cornered Donovan, his voice low and urgent. Arthur was a commanding presence, a retired CEO who had never shied away from making his opinions known. From his stern expression, it was clear that the conversation was anything but pleasant. Later that evening, once most of the family had dispersed to different wings of the mansion or retreated to nearby hotels, Charlotte found herself in the quietude of the mansion's small private library. This was one of her favorite rooms. Dark cherry shelves, lined with literature from all eras, a plush reading chair near an ornate fireplace, and a wide window that overlooked the sprawling grounds. She sank into the chair, exhausted and heartbroken. Memories swept over her like a tidal wave. She recalled the early days of her relationship with Donovan, how he would talk passionately about bridging global communities through technology, how they volunteered at soup kitchens together when Infinitech was in its infancy, how they once spent a spontaneous night dancing in Central Park to a random street violinist just because it felt magical. In one memory, she saw herself after she had lost a dear college friend to an unexpected illness. She had been inconsolable, but Donovan arrived at her door with takeout from her favorite Thai place, a homemade CD of soothing piano music, and arms ready to hold her through her grief. They used to communicate so effortlessly, as if their souls were in constant conversation. When had that changed? She couldn't pinpoint the exact moment, but it was likely when Donovan's star soared too close to the sun. Their philanthropic projects were meant to keep them bonded. They co-founded the Beaumont Fairchild Initiative to support underprivileged youth in developing nations, even traveling to remote villages in Africa and Southeast Asia. Photographs of those trips, capturing their sweaty smiles and hopeful hearts adorned the library walls. Yet, as Donovan's empire grew, so did the demands on his time and attention. The simplest sign that something was off had been his emotional unavailability. He no longer asked about Charlotte's day or her goals. Everything was overshadowed by talk of IPOs, acquisitions, product launches. Rubbing her temples, Charlotte felt a surge of tears she had been holding back all day. She had tried so hard to maintain the marriage, especially for the children. But the moment she discovered indisputable evidence of Donovan's affair, it became clear that she had been the only one fighting to preserve it. Down the hall, in a smaller guest suite, Donovan paced back and forth. His tie was undone, and his suit jacket lay crumpled on a chair. He looked like a man who had just glimpsed the enormity of what he stood to lose. Hours ago, he was the billionaire tech magnate who could dazzle a room with his charm. Now the family he claimed to cherish stood on the brink of collapse because of his recklessness. He stared at the message notifications on his phone from Alyssa. Guilt gnawed at him. More messages arrived, some supportive, some demanding, to know why he wasn't responding. He tossed the device onto the bed, unwilling to face the proof of his infidelity. His father's words still echoed in his mind. "You're a fool, Donovan. Your mother and I raised you to value loyalty and family. I didn't build a legacy for you to tarnish it this way." Donovan had tried to defend himself, but every excuse crumbled under the weight of his own guilt. He realized how fragile his meticulously curated public image was. More importantly, he realized how gravely he had wounded Charlotte, a woman he once believed to be his perfect partner, who had supported him more than anyone else ever had. A quiet knock sounded at the door. He opened it to find his sister, Veronica Beaumont, one of the few people in the family who always spoke her mind. She was older by 3 years, with the same dark hair and commanding presence as Donovan, though she had chosen a more private path, working as a clinical psychologist. She stepped into the room, crossing her arms. "What have you done?" she asked, her voice filled with a disappointed edge that stung worse than any insult. Donovan sank onto the edge of the bed, burying his face in his hands. "I don't know. I messed up. Badly." Veronica stood in front of him. "This isn't just some minor mess up. You betrayed Charlotte in the worst way possible, and you're risking losing your children's respect. Are you really willing to go through with a divorce?" Donovan looked up, desperation gleaming in his eyes. I don't want to lose her. I never wanted this to get this out of control. I'm an idiot. Alyssa was a mistake that I let go on too long. He trailed off, breath hitching in his throat. Veronica's features softened. She took a seat beside her brother, her hand resting lightly on his back. "It's time to figure out what matters most, Don. You're brilliant at making deals, forging global partnerships, but you seem to have forgotten how to nurture the partnership that should matter more than any business deal. Your marriage." He nodded, tears gathering in his eyes. Veronica had never seen him cry, and the sight of it broke her heart. This was a man who had scaled the highest peaks of success, only to find himself shattered by his own selfish choices. "What can I do?" he asked, as though searching for an immediate solution. Veronica sighed. "Talk to Charlotte. And I mean really talk to her. Apologize, but don't expect instant forgiveness. You need to prove through actions, not words, that you're willing to change. And if she still wants a divorce, you respect that choice." He nodded, swallowing hard. It was a bitter pill to consider that he might not have a chance to fix what he had broken. But he resolved to try. The following morning, tension still blanketed the mansion. Half of the extended family decided to leave early, not wanting to be embroiled in the drama. Others lingered, hoping to support Charlotte or Donovan in some way. Jasper and Natalie were whisked away to a nearby cousin's house to shield them from the continuing turmoil, leaving the mansion eerily quiet. In a move that surprised no one, Alyssa attempted to contact Donovan repeatedly, demanding to know what was going on. Donovan ignored her calls. He had no idea how to face her or whether he had any intention of continuing their relationship. Truthfully, he knew the answer deep down. Alyssa was not who he wanted to spend his life with. She had been a diversion, a destructive, selfish choice that now threatened to dismantle everything he held dear. Around midday, Donovan finally mustered the courage to knock on Charlotte's bedroom door. She had moved into a separate suite the night before, a clear sign of her intent to distance herself. He heard her voice granting permission to enter. Heart pounding, he stepped inside. Charlotte stood by the window, wearing a simple white blouse and casual trousers. She had the bearing of someone who hadn't slept, her eyes rimmed with red and her face pale. Yet she maintained a quiet dignity that reminded Donovan of the woman he fell in love with all those years ago. "I'm sorry," he began, voice trembling. The gravity of those words hung in the air, echoing off the pristine walls. "I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but I need you to know I'm sorry for lying, for betraying you, for all the pain I've caused." Charlotte remained still, her gaze fixed on the sprawling estate outside. "You should have thought about that before," she replied, her voice hollow. "I'm beyond apologies right now. I just want to plan how we're going to move forward, for the children's sake." Donovan's breath hitched. "I deserve that. But before we talk about anything else, I need you to know that my affair with Alyssa, it's over." Charlotte turned to face him, tears glittering in her eyes. "Over because you got caught, or over because you realized it was wrong?" The question cut him deeply. Donovan closed his eyes, guilt twisting in his chest. "I was selfish and stupid. I let myself get swept up in the thrill of it, the excitement, the attention. Maybe it was midlife crisis, whatever you want to call it. But it was wrong. And now, seeing everything I risked losing, I understand how worthless it was compared to our family." Charlotte let out a trembling breath. "I used to believe you could never do something like this. I guess I was naive, or maybe just blinded by love." She paused, her eyes searching his face. "I'm filing for divorce. I need you to understand that." Donovan's tears finally spilled over. He fell silent for a moment, shoulders slumped, as though the weight of the entire world pressed upon him. "I understand," he whispered. "If that's truly what you want, I won't fight you. But I need you to know I'll do anything for a second chance." She looked away, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again," she admitted. "All these years, I believed in your integrity, your sense of right and wrong. And to know you could do this, carry on lies for months, it's too much for me." Donovan nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I'll respect your decision. Whatever you decide, I'll cooperate. But please, Charlotte, if there's even the slightest chance you might forgive me one day, I promise I'll work tirelessly to prove I deserve it." Charlotte's face betrayed a flicker of compassion, a spark of the lingering love she still felt despite everything. But her resolve was firm. "You need to leave," she said quietly. "I want some time alone to think. The children will be back later, and I'll need to figure out how to explain all of this to them." Without further protest, Donovan left. He knew any attempts at emotional manipulation now would only deepen her mistrust. And although every fiber of his being wanted to hold her, to beg her not to finalize a divorce, he realized the irony of the situation. The dynamic entrepreneur who always found solutions and overcame obstacles was now powerless to fix what he had so heedlessly broken. Before Donovan could even begin to piece together his next move, an unexpected visitor arrived at the gates of the Beaumont estate. Alyssa Madison. Dressed in a crisp black blazer and matching skirt, she looked every bit the polished financial consultant. Despite the commotion at the mansion, the security recognized her from previous visits with Donovan and let her through, albeit reluctantly. She made her way to the main entrance, ignoring the uncomfortable glances from the household staff. Word had spread like wildfire among them. They knew who she was and why she was here. Alyssa, however, seemed determined, her chin set defiantly. As she stepped into the foyer, she spotted Donovan descending the grand staircase. A swirl of emotions crossed his features: shock, anger, guilt. He approached her, voice low. "What are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you," Alyssa said, her tone cold and clipped. "You haven't been answering my calls. I heard what happened last night. The entire family knows, don't they?" She exhaled sharply. "I didn't sign up for this level of drama." Donovan's eyes blazed. "Drama? You think this is just drama? My entire family is in turmoil because of us." Alyssa folded her arms. "You mean because of your wife's overreaction? She made a scene in front of everyone." Donovan's jaw tightened. He felt a sudden surge of protectiveness for Charlotte. "Don't blame this on her. She has every right to be furious. We deceived her," Alyssa sneered. "You're making me sound like the villain. You told me you were unhappy, that Charlotte never understood your vision anymore, that the marriage was practically dead already." Guilt stabbed at Donovan. Yes, he had said things in moments of weakness, looking for sympathy or validation. Now those words felt like knives in his own back. "Regardless of what I said in private, the reality is I made a commitment to her and I broke it," he replied. "Alyssa, this is over. I can't continue this." She shook her head, a mix of disbelief and anger twisting her features. "So that's it? You trash your marriage and then you decide you don't want me either?" Donovan sighed, a wave of exhaustion sweeping over him. "I'm sorry. I never should have let this happen in the first place." Alyssa's eyes flashed. "You can't just ghost me and expect me to vanish. Do you realize how much I've invested in our relationship, professionally and personally?" He pinched the bridge of his nose, feeling a migraine coming on. "I'll make sure your professional standing isn't compromised. If you need references, or if there's a position at Infinitech that—" She cut him off, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Oh, how generous. Thanks for the job offer, Don, but I didn't come here to negotiate a career move. You and I had something real, and you can't just toss me aside now that it's inconvenient." Donovan inhaled deeply. "I'm not tossing you aside. I'm doing the only thing I can do, ending a relationship that was built on lies." The tension in the air was suffocating. Alyssa stared at him, her fury mingling with hurt. For a moment, she seemed on the verge of tears. Then her expression hardened. "Fine, if that's how you want to play it. But don't expect me to keep quiet if Charlotte decides to go public with this scandal. Don't forget, Donovan, I know plenty about your business dealings." The threat was clear, and it terrified Donovan on multiple levels. Not because he had shady dealings. He prided himself on legitimate, though aggressive, business strategies, but because a public scandal could further devastate Charlotte and the children. Before Donovan could respond, Charlotte herself emerged into the foyer. She had heard the voices raised in argument from the adjacent corridor. Her gaze flicked between Donovan and Alyssa, her face momentarily slack with shock at the unexpected confrontation. Then she gathered herself, standing tall. "You must be Alyssa," Charlotte said, her tone icy but controlled. "I suggest you leave. This is neither the time nor the place." Alyssa looked Charlotte up and down. For a heartbeat, neither spoke, and Donovan could feel the pulse of tension like electricity in the air. Alyssa opened her mouth as if to retort, but perhaps sensing Charlotte's unshakable resolve, she exhaled sharply, turned on her heel, and strode out. Donovan considered following her to prevent further conflict, but a single glance at Charlotte's stricken face anchored him in place. They stood in silence until the echo of Alyssa's heels on the marble floor faded completely. Then Charlotte closed her eyes, as if summoning the last remnants of her composure. "Do me a favor," she said softly, meeting Donovan's gaze. "Pack your things and leave. I need this house to myself for a while. I need to think without you here." He opened his mouth to object, to offer to stay in a separate wing, but the resolute grief in her eyes silenced him. "All right," he said quietly. "I'll go. But please, if you need anything—" She simply shook her head and retreated down the hall. Donovan watched her vanish into the shadows of the mansion, realizing it might be the last time he'd see her living under the same roof. Over the next few weeks, life became a whirlwind of legal consultations, custody arrangements, and painful public scrutiny. The press caught wind of Donovan's affair and Charlotte's dramatic announcement. Though details were scarce, Charlotte had refused to feed the gossip. Photographers camped outside law firms, hoping to catch a glimpse of either party. Society columnists spun sensational stories, some fueling speculation that Charlotte was seeking an enormous settlement, while others labeled Donovan a typical billionaire philanderer. Donovan temporarily moved to a penthouse suite in Manhattan, drowning himself in work while simultaneously trying to reach out to Charlotte through any means possible. He sent her heartfelt letters apologizing for the pain he caused, promising to atone. He quietly arranged to funnel additional funding into the Beaumont Fairchild Initiative, hoping to show he was still committed to their shared dream of philanthropy. But each gesture was met with silence. Charlotte, on the other hand, was drowning in her own turmoil. She had hired a reputable divorce attorney to represent her interests and protect her children's futures. Every day was an emotional roller coaster. One moment, she was resolute in her decision. The next, she was haunted by memories of the man she still loved, the father of her children, the partner she had envisioned growing old with. Was there a space for reconciliation? Could she trust him not to stray again? Her parents tried to offer guidance, reminding her of her own strength and worth. Simone Kaufman, her closest friend, was there daily, lending an ear or a shoulder to cry on. One afternoon, over cups of peppermint tea in Charlotte's lounge, Simone posed a question that struck Charlotte deeply. "When you think of your future, do you feel a spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, Donovan can still be part of it? Or does it feel too painful to imagine?" Charlotte sighed, staring at the swirling liquid in her teacup. "I don't know. I'm angry, hurt, and yet there's a part of me that wonders if I'm losing not just a marriage, but a partner who, despite his mistakes, once cared for me in ways no one else ever has." Simone nodded, empathizing. "That's what healing is for. You don't have to decide your entire future right now. Take the time to grieve, to recover. If Donovan is truly remorseful, he'll give you the space you need." In parallel, Donovan was grappling with his own introspection. During one late-night walk through Central Park, where he and Charlotte once danced to a street violinist, he broke down in tears. The memory of that magical night felt like it belonged to another world. Filled with regret, he considered going into therapy, acknowledging for the first time that he might have an unquenchable drive for validation that led him astray. If he wanted any chance of salvaging his family, he needed to confront his demons. A few days later, Donovan arranged a private meeting with Charlotte's attorney, wanting to ensure that the property division and custody arrangements were handled respectfully. He insisted on equal joint custody of the children if Charlotte was open to it, promising that he would do nothing to make the process acrimonious. He even considered stepping back from his role as CEO to prioritize his family. The tech world might see it as a stunning move, Donovan Beaumont relinquishing his power seat. But to him, it seemed like a necessary sacrifice to demonstrate how serious he was about making amends. This newfound humility gradually reached Charlotte's ears, mostly through her attorney. Though still guarded, she could not deny that Donovan's actions indicated genuine remorse. Perhaps, she thought, he was finally seeing beyond the allure of success and status. She decided it would be beneficial for the children to see their father, and that she could not let her bitterness overshadow their bond. So she agreed to an afternoon meeting with Donovan at a public park where Jasper and Natalie could play. The meeting was awkward at first. Donovan arrived early, in casual clothes, a departure from his usual tailored suits. He held a bouquet of sunflowers, Charlotte's favorites, and greeted his kids with visible nervousness. Jasper was hesitant, standing stiffly as Donovan tried to hug him. But Natalie ran into his arms, burying her face in his shoulder, as if forgetting momentarily the tumult of the past weeks. Charlotte observed from a slight distance, her heart twinging at the sight. Donovan caught her gaze and approached with the flowers, offering them tentatively. "Thank you for letting me see them," he said softly. "They mean everything to me, and so do you, Charlotte." She accepted the bouquet, biting her lip. "I'm doing this for them," she replied, her voice uneven. "They miss you." Donovan nodded. "I miss them. And you, more than I can say. I know words mean little right now, but I'm working to become the man you once believed I was." They spoke a bit more, while the children played on the swings, forging the first step in a fragile new path. That evening, Charlotte found herself rethinking everything. Sometimes, divorces are straightforward, a final break from an irreparable bond. Other times, they become the impetus for deep personal change. Could Donovan change enough to mend what he'd broken? Or was it too late? In the months that followed, Donovan continued attending therapy sessions, stepped back from the daily operations of Infinitech, and made every effort to show Charlotte he was sincere about prioritizing their family. Meanwhile, Charlotte processed her grief, sought counseling, and focused on her philanthropic endeavors more than ever. The divorce proceedings advanced, albeit slowly. Charlotte's attorney made sure every aspect of child support and asset division was fair. But a subtle shift occurred when Charlotte agreed to meet Donovan for a family therapy session. Against all odds, old wounds began to heal, cautiously but steadily. She saw Donovan in a new light, flawed, remorseful, and genuinely working to repair the damage. The day Charlotte's attorney brought the final divorce documents for her to sign, she hesitated. Looking at the legal papers, she remembered how Donovan had once been her best friend, not just her husband. She recalled the laughter, the inside jokes, the silent support they offered each other in the early days of Infinitech. Could that be rekindled? It was not a question of going back to the old days. Too much had changed, but perhaps they could start anew. That evening, she visited Donovan's penthouse with the signed papers in hand. He greeted her at the door, apprehension etched on his face. "I want you to know," he said softly, "that I won't hold it against you if you file these. It's my fault, and I accept the consequences." Charlotte nodded, stepping inside. She glanced around. The place was stark, minimalist, lacking the warmth of a family home. "I just want to talk," she replied. They sat across from each other, the documents resting on the coffee table between them. For hours, they discussed the future. They talked about what trust meant, the boundaries and commitments required to rebuild it, and the necessity of time to prove genuine change. Donovan offered to continue living apart while they worked through therapy together. He didn't push for immediate reconciliation. He simply expressed a heartfelt wish to heal and eventually restore their bond, for themselves and for the children. In the end, Charlotte picked up the pen, but didn't sign. Instead, she looked at Donovan with tears in her eyes, a flicker of hope daring to emerge. "I'm not ready to forgive you entirely," she admitted, "but I'm willing to give us a chance to see if we can move forward in a healthier way. If we can't, then I'll sign them." A tear slid down Donovan's cheek. "Thank you," he whispered, voice choked. "I promise I'll spend the rest of my life working to be worthy of that chance." And so they began a new chapter, tentative, uncertain, but not without hope. The press eventually moved on to other scandals, and extended family stopped gossiping once they saw Donovan's genuine efforts. Life didn't suddenly revert to a picture-perfect fairy tale. It was a complex tapestry of love, betrayal, regret, and renewal. Yet through perseverance, honesty, and the unwavering desire to protect their children, Donovan and Charlotte found themselves forging a path they never knew existed, one where even broken trust could be painstakingly mended, one day at a time. Would it end in true forgiveness or eventual separation? Only time would tell. But for the moment, hope was enough. Thank you for joining me on this emotional journey of love, betrayal, and potential redemption. The wife announced her divorce in front of the whole family, and the cheating billionaire husband panicked. This story reminds us that even the grandest fortunes and most glamorous lifestyles can be shattered by a single act of betrayal. And yet, if the underlying love is strong enough, there might still be room to heal. Whether this couple finds their way back to each other or discovers they're better apart, what matters most is the willingness to confront the truth, accept responsibility, and work tirelessly for change. If you enjoyed this dramatic tale, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more stories just like this. Your support helps us bring you even more gripping content that explores the human heart in all its complexity. Until next time, thank you for watching.